Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you all for your work for many decades. It looks like I'm in final position here, so I just want to start by summarizing where I think we are from this. Russia is actively working to destabilize countries along its borders and to undermine European Union and NATO. And they're doing it through indirect tactics like enabling separatist forces and disseminating propaganda and fake news, as well as launching cyber attacks against the American electoral system and others in Europe. Now, all of you have said this requires a strong response, and last month the Senate tried to do something about it by passing a bill that both expands sanctions and ensures enforcement of existing sanctions against Russia. I know you touched on this in your testimony, but I just want to draw a line under it because I think it's so important right now. Ms. Samp and Mr. Wilson, would these new Russia sanctions passed by the Senate be helpful or harmful in responding to Russian aggression? Ms. Samp?
Thank you. I think they would be extremely helpful. We have to do more to change Russia's risk calculus. We're all saying the same thing here, Democrats and Republicans alike. Ultimately, this comes down to how serious do we want to be about Russia's interference in our election? If this was a fundamental assault on our democracy, then we need to be pretty serious. The Russia Sanctions Act is a monumental piece of legislation that says to Russia, enough. You're not going to get away with it anymore. I know that the longer we wait to act, the more emboldened Russia is going to feel. The Germans have elections coming up. I don't think we want them feeling emboldened going into the fall or even into 2018 in our own society. So I think the House should take immediate action to pass the bill as is. I think any efforts to water it down or delay it should be considered a dereliction of duty on their part.
Thank you. That's pretty strong, and I appreciate that and agree with it. Mr. Wilson, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I very much agree that it's extraordinarily helpful. I've just returned from, I'm in Europe a lot, and one of the things that is coming through is despite sometimes the nature of our partisan debate and lack of clarity in messaging, it is coming through loud and clear a bipartisan, extraordinarily strong bipartisan consensus in the United States on standing up to Russian revisionism and aggression. And that is coming through loud and clear. Essentially, the vote for Montenegro, 97-2, was whether the United States would leave a vacuum in the Balkans and stand up to Russia. The vote on the sanctions, that everyone we speak to when we were traveling through Europe watches that in great detail and sees that it's very helpful to get done. We do need to recognize that Russia is doing this in part because Putin is insecure at home. He does want to demonize the West as a threat to Russia. And so he will use what we do to play up the nationalist card at home. And so we need to combine raising the costs with Russia with a real strength of confidence in our own democracies and democratic institutions, because that's actually what he's afraid of.
Yeah. I very much appreciate your comments on this, and you're right, this was strongly bipartisan. You know, I was one of the co-sponsors, many others were, both sides of the aisle. The fact that the House is dragging its feet is not only bad for us here at home, but as you say, this sends a terrible signal both to Europe and to NATO and to Russia. And I think it's time for the House just to do this, to pass this bill and for the President to sign it into law. You know, I'm really concerned after the President's behavior at the G20 that we can't keep waiting for the President of the United States to take leadership on this. And I think this is a place where Congress has to step up. And we've really got to put it out there and get this bill passed and put it on the President's desk and urge the President to sign it. Did you want to add here? Please.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. We keep talking about information and disinformation. I think it's very important that we underscore why sanctions are important. And I don't think we've done enough of that. I think a lot of times people will say, in fact, the Russians are saying, well, the sanctions don't really affect us. You should lift them because they're actually just spoiling relations. But they're having an impact on the oligarchs, the companies that are closely tied to the Kremlin, that engage in some of these human rights and subversive activities abroad. We need to be a little bit clear in getting the information out on why sanctions are important and why this bill is now extremely important.
Right. I very much embrace your point on this. You know, we had hearings on this over in the Banking Committee, and one of the points raised there is it does have an economic impact. But as you all say, it also has a powerful political impact. So I think we speak with one voice, both sides of the aisle. The House needs to pass the sanctions bill now, and we need to get it over to the President to be signed. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.